Welcome back to Soul and Shadow. If these words have found their way to you today, trust that it is not by chance. There is likely something stirring deep within you, a question that has remained unspoken, a feeling that refuses to leave no matter how hard you try to push it aside. Perhaps it visits you in the quiet hours of the night, when everything around you is still, yet your mind continues to circle the same thought over and over again. At the center of that thought may be someone who cannot stop loving you, yet believes they have no choice but to keep their distance. And the truth is, part of you has sensed this all along, long before anyone could explain it. You felt it. You noticed it in the spaces between conversations. You saw it in their eyes when they lingered on you for a moment too long before quickly looking away. You felt it in the distance they created, a distance that never seemed to match what was happening beneath the surface. Because despite their absence, despite the walls they built, everything else seemed to suggest that their feelings had never truly disappeared. Stay with me for a moment, because what we are about to explore goes beyond ordinary relationship advice. This reaches into the deeper layers of human psychology, into the hidden places where fear and love become tangled together. It is a truth that often hides beneath silence, and perhaps it is finally time for you to hear it. There is a kind of heartbreak that few people know how to describe. It is not the sharp pain of being told that someone does not love you. It is not the clear-cut disappointment of rejection, where another person directly tells you they no longer want a future with you. This pain is different. It comes from being deeply loved by someone who refuses to express that love openly. It comes from feeling the reality of a connection that cannot be denied, while also watching that same connection remain trapped in uncertainty. It exists in relationships that seem impossible to define, too meaningful to dismiss, yet somehow unable to fully become what they were meant to be. If you have ever experienced something like this, then you know how disorienting it can feel. The confusion reaches places that ordinary heartbreak never touches, because you are not grieving something that has completely vanished. You are grieving something that still exists. You are mourning a bond that remains alive beneath the surface. The emotions are still there. The connection is still there. The feelings continue to breathe and move within both people. Yet one person continues to hold themselves back from taking a step closer. That creates a very particular kind of loneliness. It is the loneliness of feeling someone's presence while living with their absence at the same time. Many years ago, Carl Jung suggested that the things which disturb us in others often reveal something important about ourselves. There is profound wisdom in that idea, yet it can also be extended into another truth. The things that confuse us about the way someone loves us often reveal the hidden struggles taking place within them. Every contradiction, every moment of warmth followed by sudden distance, every step toward intimacy followed by an unexpected retreat. These patterns rarely appear without reason. They are not random, and most of the time they are not acts of cruelty either. They are the visible signs of a much deeper psychological story. They are shaped by past experiences, old emotional wounds, and protective mechanisms formed long before you ever entered that person's life. Long before they met you, they were already building an inner world that taught them what love means, what vulnerability costs, and what dangers might come with opening their heart completely. For some people, love is not experienced as a simple feeling. It becomes intertwined with fear. It awakens memories they would rather avoid. It touches insecurities they have spent years trying to keep hidden. It forces them to confront parts of themselves that feel vulnerable and exposed. This is why someone can move toward you emotionally while simultaneously pulling away. From the outside, it may seem like they are sending mixed signals. It may feel as though two completely different messages are competing with each other. But often, there is only one message underneath it all, a message they may not even fully understand themselves. It sounds something like this: I care about you more deeply than I know how to handle. My feelings for you have become so significant that they awaken fears I cannot easily control. That is why distance appears, not because the love is absent, but because the love is powerful enough to trigger everything they have spent years protecting themselves from. Think for a moment about the deepest fears a human being can experience. Not the ordinary fears that come and go throughout daily life. Not the fear of failure, embarrassment, or uncertainty. Think about the fears that live in the hidden foundations of the soul. The fear of being fully known by another person. The fear of allowing someone to see every vulnerable part of who you are. The fear of reaching out with your whole heart and discovering that what matters most could still be taken away. For many people, these fears are far more overwhelming than the absence of love itself, and when genuine love finally arrives, it does not always create peace. Sometimes it awakens the very fears they have spent a lifetime trying to avoid. The deepest fear is not simply losing someone, it is becoming so emotionally connected to another person that their absence feels as though it could unravel parts of who you are. When someone has experienced profound betrayal or emotional devastation at the hands of a person they once trusted completely, something changes within them. The nervous system adapts. It begins operating by a different set of rules. Love is no longer interpreted as comfort and safety. Instead, it becomes associated with risk, uncertainty, and potential pain. Because of this, the heart can become divided. One part of them moves toward you naturally. It is drawn to your presence, your warmth, and the peace you bring. Like someone who has spent years in darkness instinctively seeking sunlight, they feel pulled toward you in ways they cannot easily explain. Yet another part of them moves in the opposite direction. That side creates distance. It invents reasons to hesitate. It searches for obstacles and complications. It tells them to stay back, not because their feelings have disappeared, but because those feelings have become impossible to ignore. The love is real. In fact, it may be more real than anything they have felt in a very long time, and that is exactly why it frightens them. To them, loving you can feel like standing at the edge of a great height. They know what it means to fall. They know what it feels like to trust completely and suffer for it. They remember the impact long after the event itself has passed. So pause for a moment and imagine their reality. Imagine loving someone in the same way a weary traveler longs for home after years of wandering. Imagine finding a connection that feels right in every meaningful way, yet carrying a deep conviction that you cannot safely reach for it. Not because the connection lacks authenticity, not because the other person is unworthy, but because an older, wounded part of your psyche continues whispering that opening your heart fully will eventually end in disaster. That wounded voice convinces them that depending on someone is dangerous. It tells them that the moment they allow themselves to need another person deeply, they place their emotional survival in someone else's hands. This is not a game. It is not manipulation. It is not an attempt to create drama. It is a human being trapped within patterns of fear that were formed long before you arrived. Many of those patterns operate beneath conscious awareness. They influence behavior without being fully understood. As a result, someone can love you with extraordinary depth while simultaneously convincing themselves that distance is the safest option available. They may genuinely believe they are protecting both of you. Carl Jung spoke of what he called the persona, the identity we present to the world. It is the version of ourselves designed to appear capable, composed, independent, and in control. It is the face we wear to navigate daily life. Yet beneath that carefully constructed identity exists something else. Jung called it the shadow. The shadow contains the feelings we suppress, the desires we hide, and the needs we learned were unsafe to express. It carries everything we have pushed out of sight because acknowledging it felt too vulnerable. The person who loves you from afar often possesses a powerful persona. On the surface, they may seem entirely self-reliant. They may appear detached, emotionally guarded, or even indifferent. Others may admire their strength and independence. But beneath that exterior lives another reality. Their shadow knows exactly what their persona refuses to admit. It knows how deeply they care. It knows how often thoughts of you appear in quiet moments. It remembers the sound of your voice, the details of your conversations, and the small things about you that most people overlook. While their public self insists everything is under control, another part of them continues carrying your presence like a secret they cannot release. The reason they remain distant is not because these feelings are weak. It is because those feelings are so powerful that acknowledging them would challenge the entire identity they have built around emotional self-protection. There is another pattern that frequently appears in relationships like this, especially among individuals who developed what psychologists describe as insecure attachment. Many of these people grew up in environments where love felt unpredictable. Sometimes affection was available, sometimes it disappeared. Sometimes the people they depended on provided comfort. Other times those same people became sources of disappointment, instability, or emotional pain. Over time, a painful lesson becomes embedded within the nervous system. They learn that love is uncertain. They learn that the people who matter most can also hurt them the most, and eventually they develop survival strategies designed to reduce that risk. Without realizing it, they begin loving cautiously. They reveal only portions of themselves. They stay emotionally engaged, but never completely exposed. They care deeply, yet keep part of their heart hidden behind protective walls. Distance becomes a form of insurance. As long as they never become fully vulnerable, they believe they can avoid being completely devastated if things fall apart. The tragedy of this pattern is that it often remains invisible. The wounds are rarely announced. The fears are seldom explained. Instead, they show up through behavior. The person withdraws just as the relationship begins to deepen. They become silent at the moment communication matters most. They retreat precisely when closeness starts feeling meaningful. To someone on the receiving end, it can look like disinterest. It can feel like rejection. It can create the painful impression that you somehow failed to be enough. But the truth is far different. You were never the problem. You were never lacking. You were never unworthy of love. What you are witnessing is not a reflection of your value. It is a reflection of their fear. And there comes a moment in experiences like this that deserves to be acknowledged openly. Many of you know this moment well. It is the moment when uncertainty becomes so overwhelming that you stop questioning their behavior and begin questioning yourself. The moment when the mixed signals, the distance, and the unanswered questions become so confusing that you turn all of that pain inward and quietly ask, "What is wrong with me?" You found yourself wondering why the love you offered so openly, the love that was genuine, warm, and sincere, never seemed capable of breaking through the walls they had built around themselves. You questioned why, despite all your effort, there always remained a gap between you. No matter how much understanding you showed, no matter how patient you became, no matter how far you stretched yourself emotionally, that distance remained. And somewhere along the way, something deeply painful happened. You started carrying a burden that was never yours to carry. Their fear slowly became your responsibility in your own mind. Their hesitation became evidence that you were somehow lacking. Their inability to move closer made you wonder whether you should become more loving, more patient, more understanding, more available. So you tried harder. You gave more of yourself. You silenced your own needs. You convinced yourself that if you could only love them intensely enough, perhaps their fear would finally disappear. but it never did. Not because your love was insufficient, not because you failed, but because you were trying to solve the wrong problem. The obstacle was never a lack of love. The obstacle was a wound that existed long before you arrived. Carl Jung often suggested that our relationships reveal important truths about ourselves. The people who enter our lives frequently reflect parts of our inner world that we may not fully recognize. Which brings us to a difficult but important question. Beneath all the longing, all the confusion, and all the waiting, what do you truly believe you deserve? Not the answer you would offer casually in conversation, not the answer shaped by pride or appearances, but the answer that exists in the deepest, quietest corner of your heart. When no one else is listening, what do you honestly believe you are worthy of receiving from love? Because there is a pattern that appears repeatedly in human relationships. We are often drawn toward people whose struggles somehow echo our own. The person who cannot fully step toward love often enters the life of someone who, in their own way, may also carry hidden fears, perhaps fears of being completely accepted, perhaps fears of being fully understood, perhaps fears of being loved so deeply that every protective mask falls away. This is not an accusation. It is not a criticism. It is an invitation toward freedom. Because if part of this experience is acting as a mirror, then the answer does not rest entirely in another person's hands. If their inability to fully receive love reflects something unresolved within your own relationship with yourself, then your healing does not depend solely on whether they change. It depends on your willingness to change. And that realization is not limiting. It is empowering, because the moment your well-being stops depending entirely on someone else's choices is the moment you begin reclaiming your own power. Let me offer you an image. Picture a lighthouse standing alone beside the ocean every evening, without fail. It shines. Its light remains steady, reliable, consistent. Night after night it fulfills its purpose, sending its beam across dark waters. Far away, there is a ship. The ship sees the light. It depends upon the light. The light helps guide it through uncertainty. The ship feels comforted knowing the lighthouse exists. Yet despite all of this, the ship never reaches the shore. It circles endlessly. Some nights it appears close. Other nights it drifts farther away. It moves toward the harbor and then retreats again, always near enough to see the light, never willing to arrive. Meanwhile, the lighthouse remains exactly where it is. It cannot leave the shore. It cannot chase the ship across the sea. It cannot force the vessel into harbor. Its only choice is to continue shining. And perhaps the most important question is not how to convince the ship to come closer. Perhaps the real question is this: how long are you willing to wait on the shoreline? How long are you willing to remain available for someone who never fully arrives? And perhaps even more importantly, is your purpose simply to be admired from afar? Or were you meant to share your light with someone who is willing to come all the way home? There is a painful reality that many people struggle to accept. Love without action can become its own form of suffering. Not because it is intentionally cruel, not because anyone means harm, but because love that never becomes presence leaves a wound of its own. Human beings are not meant to survive solely on possibilities. You are not meant to live on potential. You are not here to spend your life interpreting hidden meanings and unspoken feelings. You are a living, breathing person. Your heart matters. Your needs matter. Your longing for connection matters. And those needs deserve more than hints, possibilities, and emotional fragments. You deserve to be chosen openly, not hesitantly, not partially, not only when fear allows it. You deserve someone who steps forward consciously and intentionally, bringing their full presence into the relationship. This brings us to one of the hardest truths in this entire journey. you must learn to hold two realities at once. The first is compassion. Compassion for the pain they carry. Compassion for the fears they never chose. Compassion for the wounds that shaped their behavior. But alongside that compassion must exist something equally important: honesty. Honesty about what you need. Honesty about what nourishes your heart. Honesty about whether the relationship, as it currently exists, is capable of giving you what you deserve. Because understanding someone's pain does not require sacrificing your own well-being. Jung spoke about what he described as the wounded child, the part of us that continues carrying the earliest hurts, disappointments, and emotional injuries we experienced long ago. According to Jung, that wounded part does not simply disappear as we grow older. It remains beneath the surface, quietly influencing how we love, how we trust, and how we respond when intimacy asks us to be vulnerable. The wounded parts of us do not disappear with age. They do not automatically heal because we grow older or gain wisdom. Instead, they remain beneath the surface, quietly shaping our emotions, relationships, and choices. The person who loves you but stays distant is often living from that hidden wound. Deep inside, they may carry a belief that love leads to pain, that closeness brings loss, or that opening their heart completely is too dangerous. Until that belief is faced and healed, it continues directing their life. And this is important to understand. No amount of love can heal a wound that another person refuses to face. That healing requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront what has been avoided for years. No one else can do that work for them, but your healing does not depend on theirs. Your growth does not require their transformation. Your life does not have to remain on hold while they struggle with their fears. The invitation before you is to become more fully yourself, to grow in self-respect, self-understanding, and clarity about the life you want to create. Often the relationships that challenge us most become our greatest teachers, eventually leading us back to ourselves. Loving yourself begins with allowing yourself to grieve honestly. Do not hide from the pain or explain it away. If tears come, let them come. If sadness rises, feel it. There is nothing weak about experiencing the truth of your emotions. Yes, it is heartbreaking to love someone who loves you back, yet remains separated by fear, timing, or unresolved wounds. That pain deserves to be acknowledged, but after feeling it, something else becomes necessary. You must begin directing some of that energy back toward yourself, not as a strategy to make them return, but as an act of self-respect. A promise that you will no longer spend your life waiting outside a door that may never open. Your love, kindness, and tenderness are gifts. They deserve to be valued by people who can receive them. And to the person who keeps their distance, ask yourself, is the voice guiding your choices true wisdom, or an old wound disguised as wisdom? One protects you from real danger, the other protects you from life itself. Eventually, there comes a moment when avoiding connection hurts more than risking it. A moment when the walls that once felt safe begin to feel like a prison. When that moment arrives, a choice appears: remain inside familiar fear or move toward what your heart truly wants. The lock has always been internal, and so has the key. Before you leave, consider this question. What has this experience been trying to teach you about yourself? About the way you love, wait, and measure your worth? Love is not a limited resource. The love you gave was not wasted because someone could not fully receive it. If anything, it expanded you. It made you wiser, more compassionate, and more aware. You are not smaller because of this experience. You are stronger. Sometimes people meet at the wrong time. Sometimes fear gets in the way. But that does not make your love wrong. The love meant for you, the love that arrives openly, consistently, and without hiding, is real. Yes, this person may love you deeply. Yes, they may feel they need to stay away. Both can be true, but neither truth defines your worth. Their fear is not a measure of your value. Their distance is not proof that you are inadequate. Their silence is not the end of your story. You are standing at a threshold. On the other side is not loss, but a fuller version of yourself, stronger, clearer, and more aligned with who you truly are. Take the next step forward, not for them, for you.